Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. Dr. Lopkin, deja vu all over again. Are you a Yankees or you're a Mets fan, aren't you?
Yes. Speaking
Yes.
of
So
deja vu
Yogi,
all over again.
they're excellent. No, but actually Yogi was your manager in the early '70s.
Yes.
Yogi Berra. Yes. So this is 1968 all over again, except we have outside agitators now claiming that they will not distant deceased. They will burn Columbia University down. And at Harvard they lowered the United States flag and raised the Hamas flag, and basically took over Jefferson Hall at Columbia, and renamed it after a so-called Palestinian girl that was killed by the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF. Um, and there is a tale of two cities here because we have red versus blue states. Obviously, blue states people are fleeing, and this puts a further light on why they're doing so. Because in Florida, there's no bullshit. It's like we gave you 3 days, and they literally did notice. If you're not out of here, you're going to be arrested for trespassing. You are going to be expelled, and your records are going to be expunged. How does that translate for you dumb shits out there that are part of this movement? It is this: that you spent 3 or let's say 3.5 years at these Florida colleges, and guess what? Your record no longer exists, and you just wasted $180,000. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of shitheads. So you're a lot there, but let's just talk first, Dr. Lopkin, about the tale of two cities that is red and blue states.
Yeah, it is remarkable how different the responses have been. At UT Austin, the
Yes.
cops went in and dismantled the tent city. In Florida, the cops went in, they dismantled the tent city. Now, granted, there is a slight difference between what happened there and what happened in Columbia, more than just red and blue states. UT Austin, the colleges in Florida, these are state schools, which means the state has the right to send the cops in whenever they want. The cops can go in and take care of this. Columbia is a private school, and because of that, the occupied area is private property. The cops don't have the right to go in unless Columbia invites them. Now, this has been the narrative. It's not actually 100% accurate because there is something called exigent circumstances. And I have to wonder if, some Jewish students had called 911 and said they were being attacked, that would have given the cops enough motivation to go in and given them the right to go into Columbia. But what you have is these extreme left wing faculties
Extreme. Yes.
blocking cops from coming in, fighting, in some cases, their own leaders from stopping this, which is absolutely ridiculous. This is I have long been a proponent of eliminating tenure. This
Yes,
is
thank you.
why.
This is going to be a big push for that because I think a couple things, not to interrupt, but it's an amazing issue because this lifts the veil off what the hell is going on in these elitist, left-leaning, anti-Semitic, anti-American cesspools, and the basically the emperor has no clothes. I agree with Bill O'Reilly that the Ivy League will not recover from this for many years. In fact, Harvard law students who were participating in this bullshit, they had offers, obviously, for extremely prestigious positions throughout the country. Some of those offers have now been rescinded.
A
Good
lot
move,
a
whoever did
lot
that.
of a lot
Good
of the
effing
offers
move.
a lot of the offers are being rescinded. And in
Good.
fact, The protesters know they have had their come to Jesus moment where they realized they're in big trouble because at Columbia, one of their demands now is that there is no record of their participating in these. They know they are not going to be able to get jobs, that they just shot their own futures in the foot.
I think it's fantastic, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. Do you know why? Because Biffy and Buffy, that, now it's easy to be a hippie and a radical when you got the trust fund and you're going to Columbia. You never worked a friggin' day in your life, okay, through high school or whatever. And you know something? I think it's just dessert, poetic justice. How do you like that? That Biffy and Buffy, who had such high aspirations to set their course, and it didn't really make a difference what they did at Columbia or Harvard or whatever, because it was all going to work out for Biffy and Buffy. And welcome back to the mommy's basement. Couldn't happen to a better and smarter people that I've ever met. I'm
Yeah,
crying for them.
they have made their beds.
Excellent.
Now they need to lie in it. And
It's awesome.
going back for a moment about the difference in how different colleges dealt with this. I think it is important to realize that state schools took action. There was an attempted protest at UConn. Now, you don't get much bluer than the state of Connecticut.
Unfortunately, yes.
But UConn is a state school, and the cops went in, and that protest never even got off the ground because they were shut down immediately. So
Okay, let
this
me
is
interject. Let me interject. I got that. Great point, but this has to be examined, okay? And I want your insight, and I'm sure our listeners would want your insights on this. Okay, it's legally private property. I get all that stuff. Obviously, you are 100% correct. But it also goes into judgment. And here's why it's further eroding the once prestigious institutions of the Ivy League and others, and that is judgment. Okay? Who are you
yes.
going to hire? Okay? Someone from UConn, very good school, by the way, exceptionally good school, but not Ivy League, okay, that demonstrates some common sense, or shithead you, some Ivy League institution with Chairman Mao as their head. I'll take the latter. Thank you very much.
Yes, and you're seeing that decision over and over again, not just in law firms. We've seen it on Wall Street. We're seeing it in businesses all over the country where they are literally looking at resumes and going, "Oh, you went to Columbia? Goodbye." They're not even being called in for interviews at this point. And that's happening all over the Ivy League. The Ivy League education means nothing anymore. It does not mean you can get a job because the big advantage that Ivy League institutions always had was not their education. In fact, in many cases, an Ivy League education wasn't even as good as you could get at a state school. But the advantage they had was their network. They had alumni in highly placed positions so that alumni would hire students from their alma maters. Now, these alumni are turning around and going, "That's not the school I graduated from. We're not hiring from you unless you get your acts together."
100% agree. 100%. But I also think there's another factor, and it's called prestige. People have jobs, people have lives. They just assume, not to their detriment, because it's not their business, that Harvard, Yale, Columbia, you name it, right? God, it's got to be first rate. These, they're getting taught by the greatest. No, that veil has been lifted, and I think I agree with O'Reilly. I think the damage is more than just short lived. I think it could be long term easily, especially if they don't clean house. Because I'm looking at, Yes, there is a whole thing about your network, 100%, but it's also like, whoa, it's a coup. No, and it's a bad choice of words nowadays.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a coup. We got someone from Harvard. Yeah, Billy Bob. Biffy's going to be joining the company. Now you're like, I don't know. I'm going to reach. I really don't want this. This could be a cancer in my organization. I don't want this person. And I'm not just
Exactly.
saying this. I really believe that. I would be very hesitant.
I know you are seeing more and more businesses reacting that same way. They're looking at this going, no, we don't want these people to disrupt our offices. We're here to
Yes.
get work done. And the degradation of the Ivy League's
Oh,
reputation, I mean, this exceeded expectations in
oh
the
no, no. This
in
is
the
something.
speed
This is
that
once in a lifetime.
yeah, in the speed that this took place, but this had been going on for a while. I mean, Harvard blew their reputation when they hired Mayor McCheese and Captain Neckfat as professors.
Yes. So 100%
You-
agree. I mean, I wouldn't let them teach at a community college. I want anyone exposed to that. But go ahead. You're right. Yeah. Hello.
So, I mean, we've been seeing this for years now, but this just, and this is one of those events that crystallizes things. We had a lot of technological advances that were very slow in coming about. They'd been around for quite a while, but people didn't adopt them. And then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, they were all adopted. It was full speed ahead. This is the same sort of thing. The degradation of the Ivy League reputation has been going on for a while, but the left kept pushing it. Oh no, it's still the Ivy League. They're still worthy. And this just shot them in the foot. This has taken it away because the entire country is seeing, wait a minute, these people are idiots. And it is absolutely amazing when interview after interview,
I love
and
that.
and not just on more right-wing media like Newsmax or even Fox, but interviews with these students on CNN and MSNBC, where these students are going, yeah, we don't really know why we're here. My favorite one was just this woman I saw interviewed just earlier today, where she was being asked about the complaints about the Jewish students being harassed, and she said, "Well, that's not happening. That's a non. It's a made up story." And what about the women that were raped on October 7th? Oh, it's a made up story. They have no idea what a fact is anymore. They've got their narrative, and if anything disproves it, oh no no no, that was made up. That didn't happen. One of the most brilliant things that has happened during this is one pro Israeli group went outside of, and I don't remember which college it was, but they went outside one of these tent encampments, set up massive screens, and on the screens
I love that. It was a Jewish group.
yes,
Excellent.
projected the images that were taken by Hamas on October 7th. And of course, these students go, oh, no, that's fake. That didn't happen. No, no, no. This is what happened.
Yeah, it's just more than disturbing. We have a whole generation of our top elite. Dershowitz said this is no joke because yeah, of course the Ivy League's got a black eye, but overall these people are going to ascend to power to some degree, and it's disturbing. This is what we've let happen. Okay, the left in America is now an anti-American force that is hell bent on destroying the very foundations of this country. Make no mistake about it. And isn't it interesting, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin? Why do all the signs look the same? What, they went to a Minuteman Press just by choice or
Oh, yeah.
by accident? Like, what
All of
happened? And the tents are the same.
it's
Oh,
all
gee,
this.
what's going
Yes,
on here?
it's all the same tents. It is all the same signs because these protests were not spontaneous. They were sponsored by a Palestinian organization that is actually funded by Soros. This is not, and I have seen several people go, oh, no, 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 this is a right wing conspiracy. No, the nonprofit that Soros set up has stated point blank, yes, we are backing these protests. We are providing them with supplies. So it's not a right wing conspiracy. They have come out and said, yes, this is us. Now, of course, Soros himself has been dead quiet on this, but his organizations are complicit.
One of the most disgusting human beings ever born, going back to the Holocaust. He's a disgusting reprobate, and anyone thinks that he's cool or has any attractiveness in terms of what his message or what his ideology belongs in the Ivy League. How do you like that one? I
And
do
and
like this
but
as well. Go ahead. Sorry.
and by the way, the situation is about to get worse because Soros's funds, I can't remember the name of his wealth fund, but his fund is has just made a bid to buy one of the largest radio chains in the country, Odyssey,
That needs to be blocked.
which, yeah, which this is WCBS News in New York radio. This is WINS radio in New York. This is
That must be
news.
stopped.
This is news sources from around the country. This is not the person you want in charge of where you're getting your news.
You are if you're a socialist agitator. Yes, 100%. I think it is interesting that a billionaire investor was on the Squawk Box, and basically he graduated Columbia. He's pulling all his and he's a multi-billionaire. His billions out of Columbia, putting it in other ventures, and he called their current their current students people who have shit for brains. That's a Columbia grad. I kind of like shit for
I,
brains right on the
you're
air.
you're seeing this from a lot of alumni from the Ivy League. They're disgusted as to what their alma maters have become, and rightly so. You know,
Yeah.
there was a time in America where people wore their alma maters pins on their collars. They were proud of the colleges they went to. And now this is happening. But they're literally saying, this is not the same college that I went to.
I would agree. And you know something that I made note of while you were giving your viewpoint on these matters and other is that another reason you hire Ivy League students is because they used to or was assumed they had exceptional critical thinking skills built on their stellar academic performances starting in kindergarten all the way through K 12 and now at Harvard, Yale, Columbia, blah, 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 blah. But when you see interviews, and I love this because Fox does this a lot, they'll go into Philadelphia, into New York City, and go to the quotations, common person, common man, and who's the vice president? What do you think of this? What do you think? And 80% of the people have no clue. It's funny, I get it, it's a joke, right? But when you have Ivy League students basically say, "Why are you protesting?" and they look dumber than these people on the street interviews. One girl was saying, "Well, I really don't know," and then going to her friend, "Why are we here?" I mean, you
Yeah,
talk about
it's
critical thinking. You're talking about shit for brains, not critical thinking.
there is no critical thinking left in these institutions. They have created an army of sheep. And something that is really important to notice is that there have been quite a few pro-Israel protests in contrast to this. Now, take a look though at the two groups. The pro-Hamas protesters, one very quickly turn violent. They're shouting death to America. They're lighting things on fire. They're harassing people that walk by them. And they're all wearing masks because they know if they're identified, their futures are done for. By
Goodbye.
contrast, at the pro Israel rallies, they're peaceful, they're singing, they're showing, yes, they're flying the Israeli flag, but they're also flying the American flag. And there's not a single mask to be seen because these people are proud of what they're doing. Now, that right,
100%. And what they're doing is not controversial. They're doing what made
right,
America great, expressing their viewpoint. But they're not talking about lowering the American flag and raising the Hamas flag or Colombia will burn. That's not great to put on your resume. I'm not exactly a career coach, but I can say free of charge, putting burn Colombia is probably not the best thing to have on your resume. Just throwing it out there, Dr. Lopkin.
probably not. But
Yeah, probably.
I did talk to a couple of attorneys because I wanted as close to a definitive answer as I could get to this. And no matter what their political beliefs were, all of the attorneys agreed that when you identify yourself saying, "We are Hamas," when you identify yourself as a member of a terrorist organization, that is no longer considered protected free speech.
Except at Columbia. Yes, there
No,
you go. Uh, Speaking of once the purveyors of free speech, we have, again, Tale of Two Cities. I'm sorry, it's true. But you have what happened to our Jewish leaders in the political realm Chucky Schumer, Bernie Sanders, Jill Stein, who I saw a clip on her that she was fluffing up her hair because she just got out of prison with her
yep,
due to her participation in a anti-Israeli, pro-Palestinian demonstration. But yeah, you have non-Jews, Johnson, Speaker of the House, Ted Cruz, others. What is going on here? And you talk about Jewish people, Soros, one of the most despicable people on this planet. He's Jewish, and it's called treason. But
yeah.
but
I mean,
he's a nutcase. But let's look at
but
Schumer.
in
You look at
general,
Blumenthal.
even Soros fits into this though, because if you think about the people that you have just named, there is one distinct difference between them, and it has nothing to do with religion. You have the people who are trying to serve their constituents. These are the people who are standing up to the protesters. These are the people who are saying, no, you are wrong. You need to stop and pull back the charade. You then have folks like Schumer and Sanders and Soros, who regard
Blumenthal.
Blumenthal, who, regardless of their religion is they are out for themselves. They are terrified to lose the left wing vote because all they care about is their career. And this is not a Republican Democrat issue. You have people on both sides that are doing, and I'll give you the perfect example of a Democrat who has been incredibly vocal about this stopping is John Fetterman.
Love him now. Yes.
You know,
He's now the pariah of the
yeah.
Democratic Party.
So
He
this
was
is
their love child when he was basically mentally incapacitated, like our leader. Now that he's got his brain back, they hate the son of a bitch.
Yeah, so this is not a Republican versus Democrat issue. This is the people who are there to serve their constituents versus the cowards who only care about their own careers and their own well being. That's how this breaks down.
I do want to take issue a little bit. I think it's more on the Democratic side because by nature, by their DNA, not previously, but in this particular 2024, the Democrat slash Socialist Party is about power. America is
Yes.
way far in the rear view mirror. That's just an afterthought. It's all window dressing. They don't give a shit. They only care about their power. I think it's despicable. And Dr. Lopkin, please, I would love your insight on that. You talk about the dust settling on the Ivy League. I predict, in my humble opinion, Mr. Jeffrey Sherman, that when the dust settles, these reprobates, I'm not talking about Soros, has always been a piece of shit, but the Blumenthals, the Schumers of the Democratic Party, these people, there's going to be egg on their face, and their reputations, I believe, will be permanently not ruined, but certainly impacted.
There's definitely going to be a strong impact. And, we keep saying Soros, but we really need to start clarifying this because Soros is no longer a person. Everybody thinks of George Soros as the one, he's the one that started all of this, but he's no longer doing any of this. He's retired and, it's his son now who is bankrolling all this stuff, who took
And a visitor
over.
to the White House on many occasions, by the way.
Yes. So, we say Soros, but it's actually multiple Soroses. But you are
Beautiful.
already seeing that the left wing has damaged, possibly irreparably. Wow, that just did not want to come out of my mouth.
Yes, Mr.
but
Biden. Yes, Mr.
yes,
Biden. Just kidding.
exactly.
Go ahead.
But we have seen the damage done to the Democratic Party, and I think what shows it the best was an interview I saw last week with a construction worker.
Love
Now,
it.
anybody who has been following the Trump trial in New York probably saw that before going to court one day last week, he stopped off at a construction site and the construction workers went crazy, shouting, "We love Trump! We love Trump!" And after one of these construction workers was interviewed on the news, and they were asked about the construction union, and the construction worker said flat out, the union is probably going to continue to endorse Democrats, but that's not going to have any effect on how their members vote.
Yes, you're right. Talk about being out of touch. Even in the auto industry, okay, the American auto
Yes.
workers, right? Yeah, they say, "Oh, you want to vote for Biden?" First of all, they're way out of touch with their constituency. Hello, hello, hello. But their constituency, the average guy, gal on the assembly line. So way, Biden would Biden's destroying their industry. Look at Ford; they lost almost $2 billion on EVs. They're bailing on the thing. The Politburo telling what people should buy and what people should manufacture. So yeah, you're 100% correct, Dr. Lopkin. Just fascinating. We'll get more into the Donald Trump thing in a little bit as the trial and there's other things developing in that area. But I want some guy, some person, figure, the king of all media that I used to listen to all the time when I was in Philadelphia. They were on, doesn't make a difference. The second, the first channel that Howard Stern was syndicated on was an FM channel, K Rock in Philadelphia, was syndicated on, was in Philadelphia. I was a salesperson at the time. I used to be driving in my company car, listening to Howard. Sometimes I would just crack up, hysterical, right? And now you have him, okay? Basically, I don't know how else to describe it, giving an interview that was basically you could puke. What happened to Howie?
Well,
He's
actually,
gone.
I'm going to go out on a limb and go. Now, I remember Howard Stern before he was syndicated when he was the afternoon shock jock on WNBC New York. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say, despite the appearance, he really hasn't changed. It's the parties that changed because he was always to the left. He was always fighting the man, and it was all about being against, you know, the Republicans were back then the man. They were the
Yes.
ones that were considered ultra conservative, and they were stayed. Well, now it's the Democratic Party that doesn't represent America anymore. But Howard has stayed to the left. So he's just kowtowing to the new boss in town.
Yeah, but it's interesting because you actually have a very salient point, and that is that traditional Democrats haven't gotten the message, including Howard, that yes, the man. No, that's not the Republican Party. That ship has sailed years ago. Okay, and yeah, if you're going to be left of center, well, guess what? The center has moved radically to the left. Okay, so get with the program. I did think the interview was horrific. He to start, well, you're the greatest. You're the father of our country. You're a great father. Your son's a crackhead. Your son, he's having an affair with your other son who died's wife. Like great. Like what are you smoking? I think talk about the repercussions or the ramifications of what we've been through the last several months. Howard's finished. He was on Sirius Radio. I mean, he went from millions of listeners to maybe thousands, but I'm sure it doesn't make a difference
Yeah,
because
I
he's
mean,
getting paid. But just so he damaged his reputation. I'm not just saying this because I'm right of center. I think yeah, the guy who was irreverent and blah blah blah. And by the way, just like Jimmy Kimmel, he has a past of being, let's say, a little on the line in terms
oh
of
yeah.
with sexism, with racism, blah blah blah. And now you're born again. Please stop it. Can I throw up?
I
But
say in
still, in the interview, go ahead.
in terms of Howard's reputation, I honestly don't think that it's going to do him any damage because his salad days are long gone. It's like you were mentioning the mainstream Democrats who don't get the idea that the party has left them behind and moved to the left. His big days are a thing of the past. It's
100%.
nobody
Well, can I
really
just interject?
listens to him anymore.
Yes, can I interject one thing on that? I commentator excellent. He would talk about the irrelevancy of him. If you ask someone 20 years ago, a teenager, a 20-year-old, okay, that I used to be when I was driving and listening to him, right? If you ask these people now, this age group, this demographic, who Howard Stern was, they might say,
They
oh, isn't he an eye doctor in Hartford? They have
right.
no idea who the
No, they
guy
don't.
is.
No, the current generation, they might have heard the name, they might not.
Might have.
Back in the 90s, he was the self-proclaimed king of all media, and he really was.
Kind of was,
Now,
yes.
now he's irrelevant. His days are gone. But in terms of the interview, I think
Yes.
I think I'm gonna disagree with you with something. I think the interview was brilliant. I think nothing showcased just who Joe Biden really is better than this interview, where he makes up a story about being arrested during
On the porch.
desegregation. And the New York Times comes out and says there's no evidence he was ever arrested.
Do you know
When
why he wasn't arrested? Do you know why? Because he was protesting with Nelson Mandela in South
Right,
Africa.
sure he
Just
was.
kidding. There you
You
go.
know,
Yeah.
when he said as a single senator that women sent him photos, scantily clad photos, and he turned them over to the Secret Service. Okay, first of all, he was a single senator 1972 to 1975. Okay, now my father was a professional photographer. I still have and dug out after Biden made these comments what was in the early 70s the state of the art camera. Okay, if you wanted to take a picture of yourself, it's not like a selfie. You had to take this camera, set it up on a tripod, attach what was a wired remote to the
Remote. Yep.
camera. Yes. Take your, 99% of the
And
public did
physically,
not.
no, wait a second. And physically send it through the U.S. mail. There was
Right.
no internet.
Right.
No, there's no
So,
electronic transformation. Or transmission. It's through the U.S.
and now, this was if you wanted to take the picture yourself. The alternative being you had to admit to a friend that you were so desperate you were going to send this picture to Joe Biden and you needed their help to take the photo. Okay, so just the sheer absurdity of this cracked me up. The fact that he would turn the photos over to the Secret Service. First of all, the Secret Service has nothing to do with the Senate. So they wouldn't care. Their job is to one, protect the president, and two, investigate fraud and counterfeiting.
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty much it. The Secret Service would have gone, okay, and thrown them out. Why would you be giving these pictures to the Secret Service? Which also shows that not only is he making up stories, but he doesn't even know what his own agencies do.
No, there's no well, that yeah, that doesn't shock me at all. But it's also bigger than that. It's his grandiosity that he's always had. I graduated in the top. No, you didn't. You were the bottom. Okay. By the way, not a very prestigious law school either, but that's another issue. And then I'm 180 IQ. The list goes on, right? Yeah, you were such a stud, Uncle Joe, that chicks all around the country. In fact, that's how UPS and FedEx was developed to handle all the bulk mailings to Uncle Joe
Right.
from naked women. There you go. Yes,
And
okay.
and
Yeah,
he
the guy's a
keeps
nut.
and he keeps making up these stories that one are so easy to check and two so ridiculous that most of them don't even need to be checked. I mean, my favorite one is his tales of being a football star in college.
Okay.
Excuse me, he got out of the draft by because he had asthma. So
Oh yeah.
his asthma was so bad he couldn't be drafted, but not bad enough to keep him from being a football star.
I got to interject something on that too. If you were an African American from Hartford, Connecticut, and had asthma, guess what? You're on the first chopper out. So stop it. And that's the other thing. This crap about Scranton Joe, what a bunch of BS that is. Believe me, back in 1965, no one gave a shit about a little asthma. Okay, stop it. I doubt that very much. And by the way, he also said that he was considered for the QB spot at Navy. Yeah, guess what? Someone, a very insignificant quarterback, was playing for Navy at that time. That's Roger Staubach.
Yeah,
Okay.
somehow I don't think that Joe Biden ever played in the same league as Roger Staubach.
I doubt that very much. But he is in the same league, in his own league of lying and creating stories. And the ramifications and the repercussions don't just go away. New Guinea may think it's insignificant, but it's really not. With China expanding, they're a important ally and potential ally in that area, and their residents are still outraged by his Uncle Boozy. I don't know if that name really exists, but his Uncle Boozy, who was eaten by cannibals. I have to say that does crack me up, Dr. Lopkin, because number one, that's a product of a distorted mind. Like, who would even think that? Like, it's like, I don't know, my Uncle Fred died of a heart attack. I'm going to say that, yeah, Uncle Fred, by the way, and he was burned alive by savages
That's
in Costa Rica. Like, what? Like, who thinks that way? Like, what are you talking about? I mean, he got shot down. That's big enough. Trust me. Hello. But he was eaten by cannibals. And by the way, people don't realize that he also said that on two occasions that day until someone put the kibosh on him. But and that even goes to the whole thing about that. Now he has his staff. And Ted Cruz was great on that because he was on some interview, not about this particular thing I'm about to bring up, but about his whole administration. There are a bunch of 20, 30 something Bolsheviks from Ivy League schools. So anyway, when he walks out of this Marine One, he's now in the gate, and you never know where he's really going to go. Is now covered by his staff because they get out of the chopper Marine One simultaneously with him. And you look at them, they're all little Biffy and Buffy. They never had a real job, and that's why we're going to hell in a handbasket. But basically, he's so bad that they had to have directional finders in the form of 30-year-old Bolsheviks follow them to follow him from the plane and also cover for his gait and his steer, and then he can't do interview questions as well. Pretty sad state of affairs, and it was also a very sad state of affairs when he gave a little speech or a pep talk for disabled vets, and he's talking to them again, yelling, "You are the greatest! You're the heartbeat of America! You're the salt of the earth!" And Dr. Jill, by the way, had to come out on the podium and the stage and redirect him. He was talking to the wrong people. Just he was talking to just people, yeah, but press people just hang, and it was obvious. It wasn't just you couldn't make that mistake. The disabled vets came from a bike ride and had their cycling gear on, and then he gets redirected. It's actually scary, and I am actually serious. I am very scared if he is reelected. We are screwed.
Yeah, his mental faculties are
Oh, it's going to be a surprise.
deteriorating by the day.
I
You
think
know,
hours.
it is now again, I was told when Joe Biden announced he was going to run in 2019 by a high-ranking member of the Florida Democratic State Committee that they knew he had dementia and could not believe that the National Party was allowing him to run. Now,
And his wife.
this is now 5 years past. This is not a condition that improves. As bad as he was then, and there was a reason that had nothing to do with COVID that they kept him in a basement during the campaign. Well, now you can't do that. This is why he's doing interviews with Howard Stern, and Kamala Harris is doing interviews with Drew Barrymore, and the New York Times is taking him to task for not being available to real reporters. He can't
Yes, but
handle it.
he can't do it. And he also at that Howard Stern debate. I love another commentator said, and I think he was a liberal commentator. He was on CNN, one of their contributors or guests, and he was saying basically his whole campaign staff, their heads probably exploded when he told Howard, "Oh yeah, I want to debate." He probably can't get out of it. My personal advice to Trump, well, not advice. I believe it's advantageous for Trump if Biden doesn't debate because I think the bar's so low, just like the State of the Union. If he doesn't shit his pants and talk about cannibals, he comes out a 5-star victory march. So I think it's better for Trump if he doesn't debate. But I still don't think he's going to debate because it is like Unplugged. Remember in the '70s with MTV? It is Biden unhinged, and who knows what he could say? Who knows?
Well,
That he beat up Vladimir
a,
Putin, he kicked his ass? I don't know.
a debate is going to be interesting.
Oh God.
And, we've seen this on the Trump end. You know, the Democrats wanted him tied up in court so that he couldn't be on the campaign trail. Well, it's turning out that him being tied up in court and having a gag order on him is probably the best thing that could have happened to Donald Trump
100%.
because he's focused. He's only commenting on issues. And yeah, he occasionally goes off, but you're seeing the stark difference between the two. The more Biden speaks, the more he sticks his foot in his mouth. And it is helping Trump. And over the weekend, a CNN poll came out putting Trump solidly 6 points ahead of Biden. And you saw the CNN anchors trying to discredit their own poll.
Rowan, I love that. Yes. It was excellent. But there's also a poll that just came out, and at the CNN poll, he was behind by like 2 points in Michigan. That's gone. It's like, I think he's like 3 points ahead in Pennsylvania, 2 points ahead. It is the only thing they have and I don't know how it's going to work out. I've heard earlier that, I mean, to last week, that the shit show with Bragg was an embarrassment, and even liberals were thinking it's going to implode. But the only thing they got is the legal case, and now a judge has ordered that Trump violated the gag order and jail time might be necessary. But let's face it, Dr. Loughlin, it just really hinges for the Democrats
It
on
it
if Trump's going to get convicted. That's it.
ac-
I mean, if there's no conviction, it's overdue.
Actually, I don't think
Over.
it hinges on that anymore, because
Oh,
a poll came out just the other day. Now, before all of these cases went to court, most of the polls had 50% of registered voters said if Trump is convicted, that's it, they would not vote for him. In this latest poll, 72% said they don't care if he's convicted anymore. They're going to vote for him because
100. Yes. You
because
said that?
the Democrats have made this such a circus that people are, again, even the most liberal attorneys are going, there's no crime here. What is Bragg doing?
And his self-appointed judge, who's a piece of crap too, and his wife is a big contributor and player in the Democrat. It's a kangaroo court. I I think if it wasn't for these judicial action, and I 100% agree with you about it's helped Trump in the near term. And if you had a Bill Clinton out there with wide open blue seas, painting any picture he want, that would be highly detrimental to any candidate. But when you have Uncle Joe who's talking about 4 more years, pause. I
Right.
mean, yikes. And by the way, Trish Reagan, I love her. By the way, she's no, not hard on the eyes either. She used to have a CNBC show and was also on Fox for a while before COVID. But anyway, she was talking about, kind of stole our whole thing about if your house is on fire, you don't really give a shit what the fireman does or how he is or how she is. She said the same thing. When things are great, you care about tweets. You care about some idiot like Trump saying the waitress at Denny's is a pig or whatever. But when you're and it's not just screwing things up. I disagree with that, Dr. Liebman. People are living in dire straits. You know something that Barack Hussein Obama took away into the inflationary calculations. I have no idea how that happened. Food and energy. I find that highly unbelievable. Uh, but if you reassert those, inflation, we talk about Jimmy Carter, right? Inflation was around 11% back in the glory days of the late 70s. But now with Uncle Joe, it's 18% if you're going to be mano on mano with how inflation is measured. So people are scared to death. They don't care if Trump, I don't think they care if he's in jail.
No,
I mean, I don't know if they do. I would vote for him 100%.
there are two factors that the American voter cares about. And both of these stats just came out. One, consumer spending is going through the roof. However, when you look at the report, spending is going through the roof, but people aren't buying anymore. They're just spending more to get what they always got. And
Yeah,
that
because
is
they'd have to spend
crippling to them.
18% more. There you go.
Yes. The other
Well,
stat
it's
is that
consumer confidence is way down,
yes.
and also consumer confidence is way down. GDP is appreciably down than expectations, but inflation. Do you know what that's called? Again, it's deja vu all over again. And for people that really like the 1970s and disco balls and Studio 54, guess what? You got your dream because it's back. It's called stagflation.
Yeah, the GDP number that came out fell so far that it is now completely within the realm of plausibility, not just possibility. That if that trend continues, when voters go to the polls in November, we could be in a recession.
Oh, that's very likely. Yes.
And the other statistic that came out that is killing the American consumer is credit card debt. People have been paying their bills with their credit cards. And now those credit card levels are at points that haven't been
Astronomical.
seen in decades, and people are
70s.
running out of credit. And now, if they've got 401ks, they're making withdrawals on their retirement accounts to try to make ends meet. This is what the American people care about. They don't
No question about
care
it.
that, about a mean tweet.
Yes, and also when they take out from their 401k, they get a nice little surprise during tax time because oftentimes it's they need to pay taxes on that as income
Yep.
without any withholding. That's not a good prescription. So, but what do you think? I'd like to leave this with what is your assessment? Because I think it's critical on what, Jack Smith, he wants to move up things. Do the Democrats accomplish what they wanted to accomplish? But that is covering for a mentally disabled and incompetent president. And does this work for them? I thought
No.
last week,
Uh,
no, I'm not sure.
no, it has completely failed, especially on the Jack Smith front, because with the Supreme Court hearings last week about immunity, the best case scenario that court watchers are predicting for Jack Smith and the Democrats is that the Supreme Court is going to kick this decision back down to the lower courts, which means the lower courts are now going to have to hear it again. And then it could end up going back to the Supreme Court, which means Jack Smith's cases aren't going to hit until after the election. On top of
How
that,
about the New
just
York
yes,
case? This
wait,
New York case still
hang on,
shitty?
hang on.
Go ahead.
On top of that, though, with Jack Smith now has his hands full because he's been charged with ethics violations.
Boy, couldn't happen to a nicer guy. New York case. To me, I thought that was last week. That was the do or die for the Democrats, and that is if he gets out, Trump is risen through the phoenix. He does his Madison Square Garden slash Harlem rallies, and it's toast. But then I heard on Stephanopoulos that some pundit, Democratic pundit, he was sure that Trump was going to get jail time.
It's very doubtful that Trump is going to get jail time. Um, Again, first of all, there's no case there. And forget the Democratic pundits because they're living in a fantasy land. If you listen to the attorneys, and this includes the Democratic attorneys, the very liberal attorneys, they are all saying to a person that there is no case, there is no crime. And in fact, the first witnesses that the prosecution presented basically shot down the idea that any crime was committed or that Trump had any knowledge of what was going on. So if Trump is convicted, one, it's just going to show it was a political kangaroo court. So I don't think it's going to affect anybody except the diehard Trump haters. I don't even want to say diehard liberals. It's diehard Trump haters that are going to go, yes, we got him, except he's going to appeal. And this judge has made so many reversible errors, there's no way it would not be overturned.
Well done. Great analysis. A very interesting week, Dr. Lopkin. I don't think it's been a good week or a good several weeks for Uncle Joe, do you? I
No,
mean, he
and
could be eaten by a cannibal if these things keep
it,
going against his way. You never know. New Guinea could come and bite him in the ass. It has
yeah,
not been a good week for Uncle Joe.
it
Getting
is.
destroyed
It
in the
has
polls,
not
yes.
been a good several weeks. In fact, Democratic pundits talked about the bump after the State of the
Ah,
Union. Well, first of all, if there was a bump, it was incredibly minor. But not only has that bump already evaporated, he's gone backwards from there. You now have more and more polls saying, yes, if the election were held today, Trump would be the winner. And this just seems to be going on more and more. And the more that CNN and the Washington Post and CBS come out with polls saying that Trump is ahead, we know from 2020, we know from 2016, and we know that these polls have not changed their methodology, that these polls swing to the left. So if they're showing Trump gaining, that means Trump is actually gaining by more than they're predicting.
100%, no question about it. And speaking of polls, a poll came out very ethical or very reliable poll. It could have been a CNN poll, I'm not sure. But Uncle Joe, he has accomplished nothing in his life or as president except for bamboozling the public. He is now the lowest rated president since the polls have been around. That's an accomplishment for Uncle Joe. Probably
Yes,
his
it.
only one.
Yeah, you have to give Biden credit where credit is due. Biden ran on the premise that he was going to unite the country.
He did a great job, actually.
He didn't mention that he was going to unite the country against him. But you don't get poll numbers this bad without it being across the board Republican and Democrat, and especially with independents. So yeah, the poll that you're talking about showed that the majority of Americans could not name one positive thing that Joe Biden has accomplished. And that's what they're going into the polls. In 2020, they voted for Joe's potential.
The
Now,
illusion, yes.
right now, they're going to be voting on Joe's results, and he doesn't have any.
100%. Great way to end this very lively podcast. Love to Dr. Lopkin. Our listeners can contribute to the podcast, can't they?
They can. Let us know what you're thinking. Go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. Message us there. You can also go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. And of course, you can hear every episode of Carnivore Bites at the Carnivore Radio website, xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
I thank you, Dr. Lopkin. See you next week.
We'll see you then.